Welcome back to Center Stage, everyone, where we continue to travel through the decades of Broadway history. Today, we're blowing our horns for one of the most electric, historically rich musicals to hit the stage. It's more than a biomusical, it's a structural experiment. This show promises the electric jazz of New Orleans and the superstar charisma of Louis Armstrong. A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical, is a jukebox stage musical with a book by American playwright and screenwriter Aaron Squire. Now, the musical tells an autobiographical account of the life of jazz musician Louis Armstrong from the perspective of the four wives he had during his lifetime: Daisy Parker, Lillian Harden, Alpha Smith, and Lucille Wilson. Now, the creative process for bringing A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical, to the stage, well, that was a complex, multi-year endeavor focused on two main structural ideas: framing the story through the eyes of the women in his life and using technology and design to celebrate his legendary trumpet. Now, the initial concept was rooted in finding a unique, non-linear way to tell a 70-year story spanning the early 20th century to the 1970s. The show itself was conceived by Christopher Renshaw, who also directs, and Andrew Delaplane, with the book written by Aaron Squire. Now, they decided to tell Armstrong's life story through the perspective of his four wives. This approach allowed the narrative to be divided into four separate chapters, each set in a different city: New Orleans, Chicago, Hollywood, and New York. And it dominated by the wife who influenced him most during that period. This structure gave the wives complex, active roles rather than simply having them be passive characters on the sidelines. Now, director Christopher Renshaw's initial artistic pressure was to make the show a celebration of the trumpet. So, scenic designers Royal and Koch started their process with this mandate, subtly integrating the trumpet and the music into the set design to make Armstrong's passion the centerpiece. Now, the musical itself was developed over several years, starting before the pandemic. Book writer Aaron Squire was hired and quickly delivered a 30-page outline and first draft in the spring of 2019. Now, the show held a series of readings and workshops in New York and Miami before major regional tryouts in New Orleans and Chicago in 2023, where the team continued to refine the script and staging before the 2024 Broadway transfer. Now, the team secured Tony Award winner James Monroe Iglehart, known as the original genie in Aladdin, to play Louis himself, an actor celebrated for his ability to channel infectious joy and energy. Well, jazz musician Branford Marsalis was also brought in for the orchestrations and arrangements, ensuring that the music felt both authentic and high quality. Now, as with this kind of show, the team did face challenges typical of a wide range historical biomusical. The show itself covers nearly 7 decades and multiple cities where Armstrong lived and worked, which meant that scenic designers Royal and Koch embraced projection and video design as more scenery. They actually used a video wall to support the show's 70-plus scenes and locations, creating subtle historical context and showing the evolution of technology from lanterns and phonographs to the neon lights and color television, which Armstrong witnessed over his entire career. Now, Armstrong was known for his huge smile and his joyous music, but his life, well, it was deeply impacted by the overt and subtle racism of the 20th century. The creative team chose not to shy away from that harsh reality, so scenes were included that portray the racism he experienced: police harassment, discrimination in Hollywood, and his surprising, fiery political stance on the Little Rock 9 incident in 1957. The show itself explores the idea that Armstrong's signature smile was in part a face to meet the faces, a carefully constructed persona that masked his true feelings and opinions to navigate a white-dominated industry. This complexity gives the lead actor significant dramatic territory to actually explore. Now, the main character and character development tackled by book writer Aaron Squire and the 3 co-directors was portraying Armstrong and the 4 women in his life with complexity avoiding simplistic hero worship or mere passive wives. Despite the structure, however, critics sometimes noted that it was difficult to fully distinguish the personalities and motivations of these four wives, especially the first two, given the limited stage time allotted to each relationship before the story quickly moves on to the next. The show itself tries to show the conflict between wanting an independent woman and resenting that independence when it interferes with his career. Well, to bridge the gap between the historical figure's genius and the actor's portrayal, the production relied heavily on the natural charisma and vocal talent of the lead actor, James Iglehart, to channel the icon's joyous energy and make the transition from dialogue to performance feel authentic and spectacular. In essence, the creative process resulted in a musical that aims to be both a spectacular celebration of jazz and a nuanced portrait of a man who found wonder in a difficult world. Well, by December of 2021, the production would have its world premiere at Miami New Drama, having a shorter run than it initially planned due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The initial run was a dramatic event, even beyond the stage. The fully constructed, expensive set remained on the stage for nearly 2 years after the 2020 shutdown, waiting for the theater to reopen. Well, when the show finally did premiere in late 2021, it was right when the Omicron variant was surging. The artistic director Michael Hosman noted that they ran two full productions, with both facing recurring cast infections, forcing cancellations and complex scheduling. However, despite the challenges, the run itself was commercially successful, confirming that audience demand for a Louis Armstrong musical was very strong. This success attracted out-of-town producers like Martian Entertainment, who secured the feature path to Broadway. Now, local critics gave the show flat-out gorgeous reviews, with one reviewer declaring that the show belongs on Broadway. Critics appreciated the book by Miami native Orrin Squire. They didn't shy away from Armstrong's complexity, presenting him as a flawed, complicated genius, and delving into his persistent infidelity and the racism he navigated. The structural device of having the story told through the perspectives of his four wives was praised for providing an uncommonly layered and nuanced look at the jazz legend's life. The Miami New Drama production served its purpose perfectly. It validated the show's concept, proved its commercial appeal, and provided the necessary foundation and proof of concept for further workshops and the eventual transfer to Broadway. Well, it was crucial that before the show head to Broadway, they take the show on the road to further workshop in New Orleans at the Sanger Theater and then on to the Cadillac Palace Theater in Chicago. It was here the team thought it was crucial for testing the show with large paying audiences, finalizing the cast, and making significant creative refinements before the New York opening. The biggest changes during this phase were in the star power and the musical arrangement team. Tony winner James Iglehart officially took over the role of Louis Armstrong from the Miami premiere. Iglehart, the original genie in Aladdin, brought immense charisma and star power, which cemented the show's commercially viability for Broadway. Grammy and Tony nominee Brandon Marsalis was later brought in to create an all-new orchestration and arrangement. Marsalis, a legendary jazz musician, was hired to ensure the score had an unparalleled level of authenticity and jazz mastery, replacing the original music team's work for the Broadway run. Christina Sahus, who played Daisy Parker in the Miami run, was promoted to associate director for the regional tour, focusing primarily on the women's roles. This addressed the need for greater cultural authenticity and a stronger voice for the women's perspectives in the creative leadership. Choreographer Ricky Tripp created the major dance numbers, with DeWitt Fleming Jr. handling the specialty tap. The choreography was widely praised in both cities for its high energy and period accuracy, successfully translating the New Orleans jazz and Chicago hot jazz eras to the stage. Now, reviews from both New Orleans and Chicago showed the creative team was actively working on the book with Orrin Squire. The structure of telling the story through the four wives remained, But the writing team worked to better differentiate their personalities and give them more compelling storylines. Critics in both cities noted that the first act, which covered Armstrong's condensed rise through his first two marriages, kind of felt rushed or muddy in its biographical details. Conversely, the second act focused on his later life, sometimes felt too long and detailed. Reviewers confirmed the show was fearless in its depiction of Armstrong's womanizing and his difficult experiences with racism, including a scene addressing the Little Rock Nine controversy. The honesty, though, it was praised, but integrating these complex moments smoothly within the upbeat jukebox structure was a continuous challenge. In short, the New Orleans and Chicago tracks were the essential phase where the show found its Broadway star, finalized its high caliber creative team, and worked to tighten a dramatically ambitious but structurally challenging script. Well, by November of 2024, the team was ready to bring Louis' iconic story to Broadway, opening at the legendary Studio 54, where it would run for 151 performances. Now, James Iglehart not only reprised his title role, but also became co-director to ensure the balance, and the team also welcomed singer and actress Vanessa Williams to the production, lending high-profile support to the project. Now, the Broadway critics, well, they were divided, which is common for biomusicals, but the audience reception was overwhelmingly positive. The show itself was widely praised for its high-energy dance numbers, stellar jazz arrangements, and the phenomenal performance of James Iglehart, who critics agreed captured the essence of Armstrong's gravelly voice and stage presence. Critics generally found the book, which attempted to cover 70 years of life through the lens of four wives, to be, well, overstuffed. Some felt the script didn't even delve deeply enough into Armstrong's internal life, despite the attempt to explore his struggles with fame and racism. Well, despite mixed critical reviews, the audience rating was very high, consistently praising the entertainment value, the tap dancing, and the feeling of witnessing a joyful celebration of a longtime music legend. Now, while A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical, had a relatively short run on Broadway, its legacy is important because of how it reinforced specific models and themes in the dominant biomusical genre. The show itself proved that there is a demand for biomusicals focused on classic jazz and early 20th century American music, a genre less common than pop rock. Well, bringing in a giant of contemporary jazz like Brandon Marsalis to handle the orchestrations lent the production immediate credibility and ensured the music felt period accurate and powerful, setting a brand new bar for music integrity in the jukebox genre. The spectacular tap choreography was a major highlight, demonstrating that the artistry of classic American dance is also a huge draw for audiences today. Well, the core legacy lies in its structural choice, telling a complex 70-year-long spanning life story through the eyes of the four wives. This approach offered an alternative to the linear cradle-to-grave story and the therapy session model of A Beautiful Noise. It was a conscious effort to give agency to the women who shaped a male icon's career. The show was praised for refusing to fully sanitize Armstrong's life, directly addressing his womanizing and the overt racism he navigated. This willingness to engage with the difficult sides of a beloved artist is becoming a necessary expectation for serious biomusicals. Guys, the show validated the career model of casting a magnetic, Tony-winning actor who is guaranteed to bring charisma and sell tickets, even in a critically uneven show. His performance was virtually review-proof and was the strongest argument for the show's existence. Remember, biomusicals remain a staple of the Broadway menu due to the built-in audience and recognizable music. However, the commercial and critical success of MJ the Musical and Tina means that new entries are judged harshly on their narrative innovation. Simple chronological storytelling is now often considered safe and plain. Future projects based on male icons, especially those with complex personal lives, will likely look to A Wonderful World structure as a way to integrate feminist critiques and multiple viewpoints. The success of A Wonderful World in attracting a major audience confirms that pre-rock and pre-pop icons with a rich musical legacy are now viable subjects for Broadway's jukebox format. In short, A Wonderful World cemented the idea that audiences want more than just a concert. They want spectacle, star power, and a commitment to addressing the complexity of the artist's life, even if the execution is a continued challenge for the genre. And guys, this brings us to the final coda of our exploration of A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical. The show may have had a shorter Broadway run than we had wished, but its legacy is secure. It proved that audiences are ready to accept a more complex portrait of their heroes. One that we can still cheer for the music while acknowledging the flaws and the personal cost of that genius. Guys, if you enjoyed this, delve into the music and the message, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring more untold theater stories to the light. Until next time, remember the music and keep finding the wonder in your own world.